Right, folks. So, welcome back, everybody. So, before we light the forge tonight, take a moment to appreciate how far you've come, because that's important. I mean, it's a very speedy train that we're on, and there's a lot of information heading your way, and it might feel overwhelming, but appreciate how far you've come so far. You're learning a language that, well, very few people on this planet can even read, let alone speak. That's not a small thing, all right? So, with that in mind, let us dive in. What I have here on our opening slide is Satav Gajic. Now, Satav, you might not know, but Gajic, at least some might recall from flashcards and previous lessons. Anybody recall what Gajic means? Next, yes, we're following. Yep, that's what it means. So what we're saying here is next steps. So what we've done in the first lessons is give you the absolute basic building blocks to create the very basic sentences that might serve you. And that's what we're going to do now. We're going to give you some extra building blocks in this lesson. Okay, but first of all, let's go through our exercises. Here, the main feedback that I want to give for all of these questions for these exercises is, first of all, there were a lot of them. There are about 20 questions here. That's a lot. Most of the exercises don't have that many. And the one for this lesson, lesson 4, also will not have that many. So, to be clear, the reason why that is that we had a lot of topics in the previous lesson, and we have to really, pinpoint each of these in the exercises. And the most valuable ones, because I did have to cut quite a few of them because there were more than this. I wanted to pack it down to max 20 because otherwise it's too much. And this already was a stretch. So again, I appreciate doing the effort, putting the effort in, and I really appreciate people doing the optional exercises because, okay, this is already much. Then having to add on top of that, again, greatly appreciated. Let's go through these. The cake is behind the candles. Now, I did ask in the exercises, please write the specific to be form. So even though I've listed it here as optional, kasab tati aktu dinak, it's optional, the tati. I could just say kasab aktu dinak. So the cake is behind the candles. I asked in the exercises to write it. And again, why? Because even though you could omit it, and it's fairly clear, it's just to make those to be forms stick. That's why I ask you to write them every time, even though we have been, you have been informed that that is optional. The next one, they, and this is important, it's male and female, are next to the 4 dwarves. So here you cannot omit it because that's the subject of your line. It's who is next to the 4 dwarves? They. So you can't omit this form. Why is it the male form? And we've discussed this because if you have a group of, let's say, 100 females, and one of them in that group, there's 101 people, 100 females and one guy, it takes the male form. Weird, maybe, yes, but that is something that we see in a lot of languages. Hence, we're using tatin, durathuk, kazad, ramek. Keep in mind that we're going to put the number after the noun. So I recall the setup we had, I think it was 2 lessons ago, where we had noun, number, adjective, who are they, with how many, what kind. That's always the order that you need to remember. Then, it dwells under the table. Tatmani undu raban. Fairly easy one, undu and under. It's practically the same word. Tatmani, it dwells. The next one, Bree is west of Rivendell. Now, I've put a lot of things here as optional. So, Bitkeen, first of all, is Bree, means place of crossing. We discussed that in the last lesson. It's a crossroad of 2 main roads, the Greenway and the Great East Road. And then Zelemu Buzra Burmubizar. So Rivendell is Buzra Burmubizar. Zelemu some had that wrong. Some just wrote Zelem. So Zelem is west, Zelemu is west of. Okay, so that's not optional. It has to be there because what we're requesting you to translate is west of, hence Zelemu. Now, Tati du is optional. You could just write Bitkin Tati Zelemu Buzra Burmu Bizar, or you could write Bitkin Tati du Zelemu Buzra Burmu Bizar, right? Is to the west of. That's pretty much a literal translation, is to or is west of. So as in English, these options exist. Same with Neo-Khuzdul in this case. The next one, the Lonely Mountain, and we're talking about the mountain itself, not the halls of Erebor. So the Lonely Mountain is north of Dale. So exactly the same logic applies. North of Fahamu, right? Not just Faham. Dale is Bizar. Again, Rivendell. Notice the last bit of Rivendell, Buzra Burmu Bizar. That's because it is valley, right? The valley of Imladris. And that's valley, Dale. That is the word Bizar. Urt Tati Du Fahamu Bizar. Again, either Urt Tati Fahamu Bizar, Urt Tati Du Fahamu Bizar, or Urt Fahamu Bizar. Those are the options. And any of those would have scored the correct answer. Then, yes, my house is old. Kun Zahare Tati Gamil. Could have left the Tati out. Obviously not in the exercises because I specifically asked to write them. So, my house Zahare, and then Tati Gamil. No, bats live in a cave. Lu Kafash Tatmanin Nigairu. Now, a couple of you had went for Tatmani, so which is the he or it form. Now, the thing is, we don't really have a choice here to use the plural male form because it's a mixed group. And, well, unless they specify specifically that all these bats are female, which, would surprise me, unless they specify that specifically, you're going to use the male form standard. It's not specified here. It's just bats in general. So, yes, that's the mixed group. All right. So, Lu Kafash Tatmanin Nigairu. Next one. A hobbit dwells in front of my hall. Is Malkun Tatmani Aivbaru Dume. And I've noticed this. A lot of people forgot this. Now, the thing is, in front is Aivbar, right? In front of is Aivbaru. So that was one of the most common mistakes. Malkun Tatmani Aivbaru Dume. Then, okay, this is a very long one. 2 men and 821 dwarves dwell in Thorin's Hall. To be honest, I think it would be probably more, but we haven't seen numbers in the thousands yet. So 821. So, yeah, that's quite a bit. 2 men. I don't know why 2 men would live in Thorin's Hall. I think that's like a story in its own. I'd like to know the whole story behind that one. But anywho, 2 men and 821 dwarves dwell in Thorin's halls. It's a very long line, and it's Atan Nu, so 2 men. Ra Kazat Zelihom Gimon Mihok Tatmanin ni Thorinuldum. So Zelihom Gimon Mihok is the 821 dwarves. So Kazad, and then the number. And then Tatmanin, they dwell, because even though 2 men, that's clearly in a male form. So already you're with the male form because it's 2 men and dwarves. So plural male form we will be using. Right, next one. It is a beautiful dwelling. Tati tumnu abnamul. Then she speaks about her hall north of Thorin's halls. Taglibia udu dumdia. And then again, this same construction optional. You could say tati or tati du. Fahamu Thorinuldum. Then they speak to me between this house and her hall. So they speak to me. So they, specifically, all females, right? So the F there marks that they're all females. So that's taglibian. So taglibian is they speak, the female version of that. And then we say to me, so we're going to add a, so taglibiane. between Niktunul, this house ala Zahar, and her hall Radumdia. Taglibiane Niktunul ala Zahar Radumdia. Then you speak quickly about your minds. Now, because we had a lot of the third person forms, Tati, Taglibia, Taglibian, Tatmanin, etc., I think a lot of people kind of went for the third person form because I saw a lot of Taglibin here instead of Saglibin. So again, the second person forms, which is the you forms, easy way to remember that. Second person starts with S. So these forms start with S. Third person is he, she, they. That starts with T, just as third starts with T. That's one way of remembering it. So the translation there is saklibin because it's you, male plural, and then milmal is quickly, so you speak quickly. About, and this is one that a lot of people kind of missed for some reason. About is a word that, I don't know, kind of got lost. So about is udu, because you could say about them, for instance, uduhun, about you, uduzu, about me, uduwe. You could, kind of conjugates that adverb, if you will. And then atak zun is your minds. Next one. Where do you dwell in the north? Kur satmanin nifaham. And are they under their house? Tatin undu zaharhun. So their house zaharhun. Okay, so the next one, the answer here is Niktunu, but let's break it up to see why that is the case. So Taiku Tati Aivbaruwe. Does anybody want to translate that here? The first part, Taiku Tati Aivbaruwe. Yes. So Taiku is the mine. Tati, it is. And Aivbar is in front. Aivbaru in front of. And then me. Now notice we have to use the W here to connect Aivbaru and the A of me, right? So Aivbaruwe. The reason why we have to use that W interfix, as it's called, is because you cannot add another vowel directly after that U. So it is indeed the mine. It is in front of me. And then the second line we get is Zahar Tati Aktue. Anybody can translate that? Zahar Tati Aktue. So the house is behind or behind me, right? Aktue again. We have this W that we need to add, right? Because we cannot say Aktue. We have to say Aktue. There's this interfix again. So with this information in mind, Ati, and then, by the way, this total shouldn't be there. I would need to correct that because that was also in the exercises. That was a mistake. So Ati and then Taiku Ra Zahar. So mine and house. I am between Niktunul was the answer. Right, going to the next one. Zirin Hanat Tati Du Urdek. Can anybody translate what we have here and what you think the answer should be? Zirin Hanat Tati Du and then Urdek. Yep, so there's two options actually. I was a bit generous when what it concerned of locations, but nobody used that, by the way. Everybody used Nudu. So indeed, the Iron Hills. Now, the thing is, the Iron Hills is plural, right? And yet we use it is, Tati. So I didn't, I wouldn't count that as wrong if you wrote Tatin, but it's one of those collective plurals. It's like the Khazad-dûm, the Iron Hills. If it's considered like one entity, it usually takes the singular form. So here as well, Zirin Hanat, Tati, it is. You could say the Iron Hills, they are, but yeah, that's not how it would be translated. So it's literally it is the Iron Hills, it is east of Erebor, so the halls of Erebor to be exact. So Nudu or Farak Nudu, which would be southeast. I mean, it's slightly southeast, so I was like, okay, well, let me count that as correct as well. Right, the next one is Aktudia, and again, it's kind of a bit of deciphering that we need to do here. So we have Rabantati Barudia. So the table, it is in front of her, right? And then we have the last line, Tatia Niktunul Raban Ra Bahadia. So she is between the table and her friend, right? Bahadia, her friend. And now the question really is, what we need to put in here is Bahadia Tati. So her friend is, and then obviously if we look at all this information, it can only be Aktudia, behind her, right? Because she's between that table and her friend, and she's in front of the table, so the friend is behind her. So that is what we have. So Raban Tati Barudia, Bahadia Tati Aktudia, Tatia Niktunu Raban Ra Bahadia. Right, the next one. This, to be honest, you had to know a little bit about Brie, I guess, to answer this one, but I guess you could easily look it up. The question was Ku Tatmanin Nibitkin. So what are we asking here? What is the question here? Ku Tatmanin Nibitkin. Yep, who dwells, who lives in Brie? And the answer is Malkan, which is hobbits, and the missing word was Atan, and Atan is men. So I'm sure there's probably, the stray dwarf there that, got stuck there after a good trading session. But in general, we're talking in Brie, we have hobbits and men. And the last one, Usmok Tatmani Niurt, Kazad, and then we're looking for, the verb in this case, Bazar Ra Kuzrul. Now, let's start with just translating the line, Usmok Tatmani Niurt. Yes. So in this case, exactly the lonely mountain, Urt, the mountain itself. And then obviously they're not going to be happy about it. So they're sad and angry. Bazar Ra Kuzrul. Kazad Tatin Bazar Ra Kuzrul. Now it's Tatin because it's plural. And it's a mixed group here. It's not, we didn't specify that it's only female dwarves. Right, so these are the exercises that we had. Then I will dive into the next thing, which is a bit of an audio, and then you'll quickly see what our next topic is.
Ibne Ugroi, Ati Zemihok, Ati Adadu Gilta Gili Raili, Naddan Abnamul De, Matmani Ni Urdek.
Right, let's listen to that one more time, and then we're going to try to, excuse me, then we're going to try to translate that.
Ibne Ugroi, Ati Zemihok, Ati Adadu Gilta Gili Raili, Naddan Abnamul De, Matmani Ni Urdek.
Now, in all fairness, everything listed here, you should be able to translate with what we already have learned, apart from the word in red. Now, that we haven't seen yet. So let's start with Imne Ugroi. What would that be? Yes, so that indeed, my name is Groi. Then Ati Zemihok. It's always a tricky one, because if it were Ati Mihok, it would have been I am 100 years old, right? By the way, we don't translate Ayaras, Gamil, we don't say exact 100 years old. We say I am 100 or I am 101. So, and Zemihok is the 101, because otherwise Mihok is 100. You might recall that exception rule for the numbers from 101 to 109. So that's one of them. Okay, so yes, that is exactly what it translates. I am 101 years old. Then, Ati Adadu Gilta Gili Raili. Yep, that is exactly what it is. Well done. I am the father of Gilta, Gili, and Ili. Now, the next one. Nadan and Abnamul. Now, let's start with Abnamul. What does Abnamul mean? Beautiful. Yes, beautiful. Exactly. Then Naddan. Naddan. What is that? children, yes. So nadan is children. So nadan abnamu is beautiful children. Now the day means I have. Now this is the structure that we're going to learn today. The I have, you have, we have, they have, it has, he has. That's what we're going to learn today. Now, if you look at the previous verbs that we've seen, tati, tatmani, all of those, the verb form is, it has a specific structure to it that is, well, let's say recognizable. There's, if it's a female form, you add ya to it. If there's plurals, it's often an N behind it, with the exception of we. So there's a certain structure to it that, you know, you'd recognize. Now, this is something completely different. This is one of the ultimate exceptions when it comes to verbs, because Neo-Khuzdul, like other Semitic languages, does not consider the verb to have to be an actual verb. It's not handled in such a way. It literally translates as this. So this line literally translates as children beautiful to me. That is what de literally means, to me. So do a de. So do as in to, and then a as in me or my. So to me, I have, to me. That's literally what it means. So if I say he has, then it literally is to him, right? And you put that behind whatever it is that you have. Now, a very important note I want to make specifically for those native English speakers in this class. The have here is a have related to possession. It is not an auxiliary verb. So what I mean with that, giving you an example, it's not I have eaten, I have slept. It's not that. That's an auxiliary verb. You don't use that in Neo-Khuzdul. You will not use these de forms, these, you know, duhu forms in this kind of structure. We use the perfect or the imperfect, depending on what verb we want to convey, to also say this auxiliary have. Okay, so you will not use that there. So when do you use this have form? If it is something you possess or if it's a relation to you. So in this case, I mean, I have beautiful children. It's not, it doesn't mean he owns his children, but it's a relation. So either it indicates direct possessive relationships or possession, right? That is the have we're talking about. So please, 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 please keep that in mind. It is not the auxiliary verb. So it's not I have written or I have eaten or we have taken a bath or whatever. It's not that. It has nothing to do with a verb. It is I have a house, right? I have beautiful children. I have a chair and a table, etc., etc. So these things, that's what we're talking about. Okay. So the last one, matmani ni urdek. We've seen the plural forms in the last session. Can anybody remember what matmani ni urdek means? That is exactly, we dwell in the Lonely Mountain, and specifically the halls of the Lonely Mountain. Okay, so what we're going to do now is look at these forms here of duhu and the I have forms. So we're going to look at that. So it is, as I said, it is to plus pronoun, right? So so keep that in mind, pay attention to that order. It is Zahar de, I have a house. It's not de Zahar or anything like that. So you put that behind whatever it is that you own. So de, we've just seen, I have, comes from du plus a, which is merged to de, I have. Then, if you know that de comes from du plus a, right? And we know that the male you form is zu, like your house, Zaharzu. Then what do you think you have, the male form, would be? Venture a guess, folks. Yep. Duzu. Duzu means you have. So with that in mind, what do you think the female version of you have would be? Duzi. Yeah. Duzi. You have. Then specifically for female. Now, this I want to show you to start with, because you would think, okay, well, then the he or it has is simply going to be duhu. Well, yeah, not exactly. There's a little bit of a exception there, which is the you at the end is elongated. It's duhu, not duhu, right? So he, it has, it comes from the same base, to be clear. It's still two and then he or it, or his or her, or his or its, to be exact. But it's elongated. So keep that in mind. That last vowel is stretched. Then, what do you think she has would be? Yep, bingo, dudia. Dudia is she has. Now we're going for the plural forms here. So we're going to see all of those in one go. Now I want to just go through these with you. So do ma, because ma is the form that you use to say our, right? So to us, literally to our, to us. So which is we have, do ma. Now, for these plurals, what normally happens with the you plural when we're talking about a verb? So if you say, for instance, you speak, then, you know, you, the plural, speak. What would happen with the verb in Neo-Khuzdul? What would you normally do to it? You add an N, exactly. So here, same thing, right? Duzu becomes duzun. You, male plural, have. So venture a guess what the female version of this would be. Yep, duzin. You, female, have. So once you know these forms, apart from, you know, the odd exception, most of these fit that form fairly well. Now, here you take with the they have, the male form, you take basically what you have with the he, it. So also you keep that extended vowel and you just add that N. So it's duhun, they have. And then same with what you would do with the plural for a verb, dudian, is they, the females, have. So it's not a complex form per se when it comes to conjugation, if you can call it conjugation. It's mainly about where do you put it. That's different. That's different to a verb, because we don't consider it a verb as such. That's why it has kind of odd rules. So if you say, I have a house, you can say Zahar de. So it's, I have a beautiful house. Then it's Zahar abnamul de. So you say what it is that you have, and then you add this form. So literally it is house beautiful I have, right? So you're going to put that, not necessarily at the end of the line, mind you, but you're going to put that at whatever it is that it is you have right behind that. Okay. So that's the order that you need to keep in mind. So think about, okay, what is it that I have, you have, he has, whatever the form is. And if you've found that in your line, it's behind, it's right behind that. So you're saying house beautiful I have, long table he has, for instance, or to be exact, table long he has, right? So keep that in mind. These are the forms. We're going to see a couple of examples here. The question here is, now we've just seen duhun. Now could, you might recall, anybody know what could duhun means? Yeah, what do they have? So could is what do they have? Again, the specific auxiliary verbs like do, right, are rarely translated in Neo-Khuzdul, or never really translated in Neo-Khuzdul. What do they have? It's basically is what they have, right? That is literally what it says. Okay, so again, keep in mind the order. We're going to do a few of these together. So they have 2 houses. So what we're going to use, first of all, houses, so it's plural, is zahar. So not zahar, but zahar. So zahar nu dudian. Here we specify that it's they, female, plural, right? So again, the order here is important, that it is the noun, the number, and then in this case, they have, or the noun, the adjective, it could be as well, or could even be noun, number, adjective, and then you add this to have form, this duhu form. Now, again, just keep in mind that whatever it is that this person owns or has, that comes before this form. And that's a bit weird if you think about it, because it's completely different to other verbs. But that's the thing. It's not treated as a verb. To have is not treated as such. Okay, next one. You, male singular, have a kind friend. So we're going to do this one together again. So friend is baha. Kind is guluk, and then you have duzu. So what we're stuck with, the result is friends, kind, to you, literally, right? Duzu, but it means you have. So you have a kind friend. Right, next one. She has a long name. So let's start with long name, which is going to be the front of this sentence, right? So long name, what would long name be? Yes. So imen sigin. So imen is name, and then sigin is long. And then what form would we put behind that to indicate she has? Dudia. So we end up with imen sigin dudia. Imen sigin dudia. So name long, she has. Imen sigin dudia. Right, next one. We have an old mine. So let's start with old mine. Let's try that first, because that's what we're going to put at the start of our line, because remember, these to have forms, they have, you have, she has, we have, it's always at the back. Well, it's more specifically behind whatever it is that you have. So if we say we have an old mine, the first thing that we're going to put in this line is old mine. So how would you translate old mine? It's taiku gamil, because you're always going to have your noun first and then your adjective. So taiku gamil. And then we have. Can anybody recall what we have was in that overview we just saw? Duma, exactly. So taiku gamil duma. So mine, old, we have. Right. You have a friendly sister, and we're talking about the you in question here is one specific female. So you have a friendly sister. So again, what are we going to start with here? What is going to be our, either you can translate the whole line if you like, or just give me the first part, what you think would, be the start of this line. Yeah, there we go. Nana bahul duzi. Very well done, very nicely translated. So Nana is sister. Nana, don't forget the glottal stop at the end. Nana bahul, it's friendly. And then duzi, you have, right? So you have a friendly sister. Nana bahul duzi. Again, it's a bit of a mind warp, this structure, compared to English or most Germanic languages for that part, mainly because we treat to have as a verb like any other verb. Semitic languages generally do not. So that's what you get with this, because obviously Neo-Khuzdul is a Semitic language. Right. I have an angry uncle. Anybody want to translate that one? Yeah, nicely done. Irak Adad. Irak Adad is uncle. So remember, Adad is father. Irak means side, right? So side, father, literally, which is kind of related to your family tree, if you will. It goes to the side. Khuzrul is angry. So Irak Adad Khuzrul de. I have. Irak Adad Khuzrul de. Very nicely done. Right. Next one.
They have a cave troll.
They do. They do have a cave troll. So Dur is the the word for troll, by the way. We haven't seen troll yet. So durch is troll. They have a cave troll. A cave troll, by the way, is considered one word. So I'm just saying it's written separately in English, but it's, you know, the word for cave. Now you know the word for troll, so you can put it together if you like. Anybody want to give that a chance? Gairu durch duhun. Yeah, that's it. So Gairu is cave. Dur is troll. And then you get Dairu durch duhun, which means
They have a cave troll.
they do indeed. Right. Okay, I think that's it for our exercises on this one. Very important note is that I have added a document, I believe, in the post-class information, the post-class folder, which is going to be online after this lesson, that explains the form duhu and when you need to, where exactly you need to place it in the line. There's a lot more information in there as well. It's not all of it is relevant to the lesson, but it's more of a for your information. So if you have this kind of line, you know, keep that in mind. If you have that kind of line, keep that in mind, etc., etc. So it will cover all of what we've seen here, but it will also add quite a lot. It will talk about even using the to have form in the past, because this all talks about the present, by the way. And we haven't really seen anything like that, but it does mention that, although, again, it's more for your information. It's not something you'll be tested on or anything like that, you know, these past forms. But I just wanted to put that in there as a general info, because that's, again, one of the exceptions to this very peculiar verb, if you can call it that. Okay, so the next one, the fourth section here, we're going to look at using please. And please is kasamhili. Now, if you look at this word kasamhili, you might see a few things happening. So first of all, if we cut the first two letters off and we get samhili, you could already kind of deduce that this is a verb directed at one specific person. The S here indicates that it's a second person. So it literally means, kasamhili literally means the ka is can, and then samhili is you do. So can you do? That is literally what please is. Can you do? Okay. We'll see the ka form, by the way, this little thing that you add in front of a verb to make it can. We'll see that in a later lesson. So what are we going to ask for? We're going to order a drink, right? We're going to order, well, there's quite a few drinks that I've listed here. You could order a drink in a few ways. Before we go through the possibilities, let me just quickly go over the various drinks. Now, you'll notice that there's three types of words for ale. So you have the black kind of dark ale is the garg. Then you have the zalul and the zulul. So zulul is lager, zalul is amber ale, right? I'm just calling it amber ale for ease. Could also mean red ale or whatever, but zalul. So zalul is the red ale, lager is zulul, and then you have garg, which is the dark ale. Then we have, so if we're looking at the words here for drinks, so drinks is shalak. Then we have something that looks very much like it, which is shalak. So shalak is water. So drinks water, a drink shalk, right? Shalk ze, one drink. So all of that is pretty much related to the verbs for water, right? So drink, and also the verb drinking, by the way. We'll also use these SHLK letters. So shalak, drinks, shalk ze, one drink. And then shalak is water, but shalak is drink. So it all depends where you put that extended vowel. Now, if we know that shalk is a drink, and we also know what the word amad means, you're looking at something, well, it's clearly a glass of milk. Amad shalk, what does this literally mean? Yes, so, well, yes, comes from the mother, so Amat Shalk, mother's drink. Then there's something that looks, it's almost exact copy of English. Coffee, cuff, coffee, cuff is coffee. So that's a pretty easy one to remember, I'd say. Then the word for wine is, if we're talking about one specific, it's marn, right? Marn is wine. And we have marn baraz, red wine, marn labam, white wine. Ars mazarhul. Now, that's a bit of a weird one, perhaps. Ars mazarhul. It means specifically hot and drowned. So you drown the leaves in something hot, right? Ars mazarhul is tea, right? So I think we've covered all of these here. So how are we going to order these? So there's a couple of options. If you say, I'd like, one drink of whatever, then drink one, please. So giving you an example, kafe ze kasamhili. So one coffee, please, right? Kafe ze kasamhili. So other option is, I'd like a cup of whatever. So cup of drink, and then whether you use one or not is optional, but you don't need to because you're already saying cup of, and that's singular. So shelak ugarg kasamhili. So shelak is cup of or glass of. So shelaku, cup of, glass of. Shelak is cup. Shelaku, cup of, glass of. So we'd like a glass of dark ale here. So shelaku garg, or a cup of dark ale, or a tankard of dark ale, whatever you want to call it. So shelaku garg kasamhili. And the last one is, let's say we want several. We want, 3 of something or 2 of something, whatever. As long as there's more than one, it's cups of. And we're going to say sheluk. So not shelaku, but sheluk is cups of. Shalak gem kasamhili. So 3 cups of water, 3 glasses of water. That's what we have here. So if we want to say a glass of white wine, please, let's do this one together. So a glass of. So glass of or cup of uses that second form, cup of, and then whatever your drink is, and then you add kasamhili. So which is going to be shelaku, so cup of, shelaku. Then you can add the number, whatever it might be, shelaku, but honestly, you don't need to. And by the way, that ze should be behind marn labam. I've just noticed that your drink comes first because it's like a noun, and then you add how many. And then kasamhili. So, but honestly, if you use shelaku, don't use the number because it's already clear that we're talking about one thing, right? 2 cups of tea, please. So tea is ars mazarhul, the drowned hot thing. 2 cups of tea, please. So that makes it cups of, which uses sheluk. Sheluk ars mazarhul nu. And here it is, placed correctly. Kasamhili. And the next one, a coffee and a red wine, please. So coffee, kaf, then ra would be and, marn baraz, red wine, kasamhili. Because we're not asking for a cup of or anything like that. We're just saying, this is the first form. We're just saying this drink and that drink, and that literally translates exactly like that. So kafse ra marn barase kasamhili. A coffee and a red wine. So 1 coffee and 1 red wine. Right, the next one. An amber ale and a lager, please. Can anybody try this one? An amber ale and a lager, please. And the words are just on the screen. They're all on the screen. You don't need to remember anything. You can just read it off. So amber ale and a lager, please. Anybody want to give this a go? Yeah, bingo. Perfect. Zalal is the amber ale, right? The red ale. Zulul is the lager, right? The clear ale. I'm saying, by the way, lager and amber ale as kind of convenience to kind of group all of these, blonde-looking ales and all of these reddish-looking ales together, because that's what it is. It doesn't necessarily need to be an exact lager. So to be clear, it's not Zal or Zul. So if there's a twin letter, right? Often cases, especially with a plural, you will add a tiny little pause, right? Now, if it's not a plural, that's not always the case. And in here, this is a perfect example of that, where you have the schwa sound coming in. So zalul, zulul, the sound comes in between those. Never ever will you have two twin letters become like one long letter. So it's never going to be zal or zul. It's when there's twin letters, you either are going to put a pause in there. It's definitely the case for plurals. There's a little like zahar instead of zahar, right? There's a little pause there. Or it's like in this case, zalul, zulul, there's the schwa sound, right? Let me see the next one. 5 dark ales and a glass of milk, please. Now, might be a bit of a challenge. You might need to recall the word for 5, but if anybody wants to give this one a go, feel free. So 5 dark and a glass of milk, shelaku amachalk. Now, to be fair though, 5 dark ales, you could just say gark gamek. Here we've used cups of because it's more than one, right? So sheluk, which is we like tankards of or cups of or glasses of, if you will. Dark ale, 5 of them specifically, gark gamek. And then rek ra shelaku, a glass of, and that's, you know, the important thing here. Ra shelaku amat shalk kasamhili. Okay, this should be fairly simple. A lager, please. Anybody want to give that one a go? Yeah, it's very good that you translated the ze, because, I mean, normally you'd say, okay, a lager, we don't translate a, right? But you need to specify here how many, right? So it's the first option, drink 1, please. So a lager, please, is zulul ze kasamhili. Okay, then moving on to the next one. Now, if you order stuff, you obviously need to be able to pay for it as well. So we're going to look at ZZ coins. ZZ is 1 Izis, by the way, is a coin, Izis, and 2 coins is ZZ. So we have makul, kabel, kadus. This again, the sound, the schwa sound comes in there. So makul, kabel, kadus. So it's a copper coin, it's a silver coin, it's a gold coin. So makul ze, 1 copper coin. Kabel ze, 1 silver coin. Kadus ze, 1 gold coin. Right? 2 copper coins. Makal nu, 2 silver coins. Kabal nu, 2 gold coins. Kadaz nu. Now, the metal itself in general is mikil is copper, kibil is silver, kidis is gold. However, a bar of golds is biris, right? There's 2 words for gold. Neo-Khuzdul has words for the color of specific metals and for the metal itself, the brilliance of the metal. Like silver has 2 specific words. One is zigil, which means silver colored, and the other is kibil, which is related to the metal. So you will see kabel, kabal, kibil. So this KBL relates to things related to the metal itself. Now, the only exception there is kidis is the general term for gold, but if we're talking about a bar of gold, it would be biris. Now, I've used symbols here of what looks like the 3 peaks of Khazad-dûm. For one of them is copper, 2 is silver, 3 is gold, just to kind of easily note those. So we're looking at basically a menu here. So a shelaku garg, a cup of dark ale, is 90 coppers, right? So garg tati makal tagem, right? So makal is the copper coins, so 90. By the way, for just convenience of this exercise, we've imagined that 100 copper coins make 1 silver and 100 silver coins make 1 gold, right? Now, there's a very expensive item at the bottom of this menu, a very expensive item, which is Marn Baras Buzra Burmu Bizarul. What do you think? This, by the way, very long item on your menu. But what do you think this is? Yes, so Buzra Burmu Bizar is Rivendell. So something from Rivendell, Rivendelish ale, not ale, red wine in this case, would obviously need an adjective. So we add ul at the end to indicate it's an adjective here. So Marnbara's red wine, wine red to be exact, Buzra Burmu Bizarul is 1 gold piece. Now that's very expensive wine. Anywho, so this is your list of items. Let's just go through a couple of these. Garg Zirin Hanadul. What do you think this is? So Garg Zirin Hanadul is indeed dark ale from the Iron Hills, and it is a silver and 50 coppers. Now, if you look at the order, by the way, of how I'm writing this, this is a copy of how you write the numbers. So you go from the smallest on the left to the biggest on the right. Same thing here. So the coppers and then your silvers. So we have Zalul, which is 80 coppers. And we have, so the Zalul is the amber beer. And then the lager is a bit less expensive. It's 70. We have something called Zulul Bitkinul. Anybody know what that would be? Yes, so Brie Land Lager, if you will, and it is 1 silver. Now, we have Cuff, which is 40 coppers, and then we have an alternate version, if you will, which is a bit more expensive. Now, I'd like to know what Cuff Yamatchalk would be. Coffee with milk. So the with, by the way, is with is normally ya. So ya, ya. So kaf ya amatchalk, but we drop this second a because there's already an a in amatchalk because there's a glottal stop. So there's a bit of krasis going on there, which is the merger of the compression, if you will, of vowels. So then this second ya, the second a in ya is dropped, and you get kaf yamatchalk instead of kaf ya amatchalk. Okay, right. So these just examples here. The way you would say that is as an example here, ars mazarhul. If you use the form that we see there in red, garg tati makal tagem, and you need to tell me, okay, ars mazarhul is 40 coppers. How would you say that in Neo-Khuzdul? Ars mazarhul tati makal zakem is indeed, T is 40 coppers. Cool. Now you can head into the Tavern of Erebor, order yourself a drink, and even pay for it. Okay, so putting all of these up, let us listen to the next audio, which is about ordering drinks.
Shamuk. Shaluk sulal gem kasam hili.
Gem.
Kun. Shaluk sulal gem.
Bir. Tada bakal sasek rakabal nu kasam hili.
Yadi.
Akminizu.
Let's listen to it again, and I'll put up the translations for it line by line.
Shamuk. Shaluk sulal gem kasam hili.
Gem.
Kun. Shaluk sulal gem.
Bir. Tada bakal sasek rakabal nu kasam hili.
Yadi.
Akminizu.
All right, let me listen to it again.
Shamuk. Shaluk sulal gem kasam hili.
Gem.
Kun. Shaluk sulal gem.
Bir. Tada bakal sasek rakabal nu kasam hili.
Yadi.
Akminizu.
All right, so let's start with what we already know. Shamuk should be very clear to everybody, which is... Yep, greetings. It's kind of like hello, to be honest. It's like, a very somewhat formal hello. So hail or greetings is the best way to translate that, I would say. So Sheluk Zulalgem Kasamhili. So what is this person ordering? Sheluk Zulalgem Kasamhili. Yeah. So Sheluk is cups of, right, plural. Zulal is lager. Gem is 3. and then kasamhili, please. So sheluksululgem kasamhili. He's ordering 3 pints, if you will, 3 cups, 3 glasses of lager. The person at the bar says, okay, 3 gem, right? 3, and he just confirms kun, yes, sheluksululgem. So yes, 3 glasses of lager. Now the next thing, bir tada makal sasek rakabal nu kasamhili. So we know that makal is the copper coins. We know that kabal is the silver coins. You know, it's listed there on our slide on the image. So if somebody says bir tada makal sasek rakabal nu kasamhili, what is this person saying? So bir, first of all, means yes, understood, of course, clear, right? So she's just basically confirming, I got it, right? So bir, then tada, that, makal sasek, 10 coppers, ra kabal nu, 2 silvers, please. So what she's saying is, okay, that'll be, so that is, she doesn't need to put the is, so that is 10 coppers and 2 silvers, please. Yadi is the word for here. So here. So he's offering her these 10 coppers and 2 silvers here. And then she says, akminizu. Anybody remember what akminizu means? Yeah, thank you. So akminizu, this is a word that we saw in the letter, by the way. Akmini is the verb I thank, and then you add zu for you because she's addressing a male. Right, that is the last thing that we're going to listen to. As you can see, our family here has arrived at the market. We have the grandfather and aunt with Gilta and Gili. So let's see what is going on here. And let us listen. So I'm going to play it first without the text. And then we're going to listen to it again with the text. And then we're going to dissect what it is that they're saying.
Irakamat kasamhili.
Lu. Hagaduzu.
Akirakamat.
Aglibi lu.
Yadi, kabal nu siginyande.
Kun.
Raye,
Bir, yadi kabal nu ya siginataye.
Kud,
Adat. Ugrui taglibi lu.
Taglibi hu,
Kun.
All right, so there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot going on. Let us listen to it again, and I will put up the lines.
Irakamat kasamhili.
Lu. Hagaduzu.
Akirakamat.
Aglibi lu.
yadi, kabal nu siginyande.
Kun.
Raye,
Bir, yadi kabal nu ya siginataye.
Kud,
Adat. Ugrui taglibi lu.
Taglibi hu,
Kun.
Right, let's listen to it again.
Irakamat kasamhili.
Lu. Hagaduzu.
Akirakamat.
Aglibi lu.
yadi, kabal nu siginyande.
Kun.
Raye,
Bir, yadi kabal nu ya siginataye.
Kud,
Adat. Ugrui taglibi lu.
Taglibi hu,
Kun.
So let's unpack this. I think it's a typical scene for a market with the grandparents kind of doing their own thing, not really listening. But anyway, Irak Amat Kasamhili. Let's start with that. Irak Amat Kasamhili. So the blue lines, by the way, is the little fella Gili saying those. Yes, that's what he's saying. So he's pointing at what seem to be hats, Dwarvish hats. So Irak Amat Kasamhili is aunts, please. And what is her reply? Lu Hagaduzu. Yeah, you have a lot, you have much, you have, that's Haga is lots of, much, right? So duzu is you have, right? So lu, no, Haga, a lot, much, duzu, you have. So you have a lot. It's enough, right? And this is a new word that we haven't seen yet, which is ak. And ak is the word for but. So he's saying, but, and, come on, man, I really want that little hat here. But, yep. And she says, aglibi lu. What does that mean? Yes. I say no. That's it. However, our grandfather here in the story has a completely different idea. He says, Yadi kabal nu siginyande. Now, let's start with the first piece here. Yadi, we've seen earlier, which is here. So it's Yadi, by the way, is used when you're offering, but it's also used generally as for the word here. So Yadi, here. Kabal nu siginyande. So yand is, as you know, sun. It's another form of dashat, right? Sun. Sigin is long. So long son, lit is grandson. That's what it means, grandson. So siginyand is grandson. So with that in mind, Yadi kabal nu siginyande. What is he saying? So here, 2 silvers, grandson, my grandson to be exact, siginyande, my grandson. So here you go, 2 silvers. And obviously he's very happy about it. He's like, yes, I can buy that hat. And the response of Gilta, who's on the shoulders of Granddad, is raye. Anybody want to venture a guess what raye means? Yeah. She's like, hey, wait a minute. He's getting 2 silvers? I want 2 silvers. And me. So ra is and then a is me or my. So you have this interfix happening again. So we cannot just put a next to the a of ra. So you add the y. Why is that? Because it ends with an a. If it would end with a u, we're adding a w. So it's raye and me. And what is his response to that? Yes. So there's one word that we've seen just earlier with the coffee with milk, which I said the with is ya, right? But it also means the word also, right? So with or also is ya. So bir, which means correct, clear, you're right. That's what it means. Bir. It's a confirmation word, basically. So bir, yadika balnu ya siginataye. So here, 2 silvers, also my granddaughter, right? Siginataye. So he's saying, yeah, sure. Here's 2 silvers, also for my granddaughter. And obviously she's really excited. She goes, Kun, yes, Kun. Now, unfortunately, Girena is not that happy with that. And she has a response. Anybody can figure out what her response is? Exactly. So the father of these children, Ugroi, said probably, they're going to be whining and wanting stuff at the market. Just tell them no. All right. They have a lot. They have enough. Tell them no. So dad, Adad, Ugroi taglibi lu. So Groi said no. He said no. The grandfather is rather surprised and he says, taglibi hu? Anybody recall what taglibi hu means? Did he say it? So who can mean he or it. So if you say taglibi hu, did he say it? Right? Because taglibi is he says. Taglibi hu could be he says it to him, or it could also mean he says it. Right? Because who means him or it. So taglibi hu is, did he say it? Did he say that? I don't know. I didn't hear that. And then she is somewhat angrily saying, Kun, yes, he said. Damn you. Now we have, stuff to explain again. And Ugro is not going to be happy because he said no. Anywho, granddads, what do you do? The next lesson, the usual, there's going to be audio fragments. There's going to be exercises. The exercises are going to be a bit smaller this time. There's 10 lines. There's the flashcards that are going to be, they are available. You can already look at those for lesson 4. There is an optional exercise that has been picked that I will also post. Right, folks, have a good one and see you soon. Shalom, Shamuk.